everybody, Josh Sigurdsson of World Alternative Media here, and we're joined once again by the Liberty advisor, Tim Picciott, and we've got a lot to go into today because, as people probably have noticed at the pump, the gas prices are absolutely through the roof. I don't think we've ever seen anything, at least in our lifetimes, like this. It is absolutely cataclysmic what we're witnessing, and it's being blamed on everything and anything under the sun. But today we're going to try and unpackage this a bit. Tim is a certified financial planner, and you could become a client of his at thelibertyadvisor.com if you're in the United States. And he has some good insight into these issues. So we're going to break this down shortly. But before we do, I wanted to look into some of these articles. So Zero Hedge headline says, the options are looking pretty bleak. California gas prices sprint past $6 per gallon as Mendocino station approaches double digits. Absolutely crazy, especially considering last year, Tim and I were doing, actually in 2020, Tim and I were doing videos talking about how, you know, the oil prices went negative and absolutely insane. But now we're seeing basically the opposite. No one can afford it, and there's a lot of reasons that we'll go into shortly. But also this out of cnet.com. It says gas prices are at record high. Here's why they won't drop anytime soon. In 13 states, a gallon of regular is averaging more than $5. And then there's, at the same time, we have these issues with inflation. And as we recently did a video on, Biden is blaming Putin. He's blaming the pandemic. He's blaming basically everything except for, and not even himself. You shouldn't be blaming himself either. You should be blaming the Fed, because the Fed is what is printing money. And under Trump and under Biden, they printed insane amounts of money. I think it was 25% of all currency ever printed was printed in the year 2020. Amazing. When that reaches market, the inflation goes up. Oh, that's probably just Putin. I mean, it's so absurd. But as this Daily Mail article says, Biden claims his administration has achieved the most robust recovery in modern history, despite gas prices more than doubling since he entered office, approval in his handling of the economy plummeting, and inflation at a 40-year high. You know it's bad when mainstream media, leftist rags, are basically saying, hey, Biden, no, this is pretty bad. I don't know what you're talking about. And, you know, every president touts job numbers, but they don't actually quote, you know, the labor force participation rate, which is obviously a huge indicator. And finally, one other article that I wanted to bring up here, just another headline out of Zero Hedge, restaurants adding inflation fees amid razor-thin margins. So we got a lot to unpack here, Tim. First of all, I wanted to hear your thoughts on why we're actually seeing the gas prices go up so enormously. Like, people could say, oh, well, Russia this, Russia that, or whatever. But, I mean, the reality is we're just witnessing inflation from so many different angles, from meat products to just, you know, if you want to buy a gun right now, it's sold out basically everywhere. Things seem really chaotic. And then you go to the pump. If you want to get anything shipped, there's already a collapse of the supply chain. You go to the pump and it costs you an insane amount of money. I have a good friend that we both know that is a trucker, and he was doing hauls and had to park his vehicle because gas prices were too high and he wasn't actually making profit off of it. What is causing all of this to occur as we witness some of the highest gas prices in history?
I think the gasoline prices were the most obvious thing that would explode underneath the Biden regime. So, I mean, if you actually go back to January 6, 2021, what I was doing, and I don't trade a lot, I'm not a day trader, I'm making more longer term projections and longer term prognostications on where things are eventually going to go and try to get there ahead of time. But the big thing I was doing January 6th, and I was telling people too that I thought it was going to be a contested election before the election, and telling people it was going to be stolen before on video, and, you know, February 2020, even having the states listed on a PowerPoint, except for Georgia, that would be stolen. So, you know, you got to listen to someone who actually, you know, has a track record on some of this stuff. But what I was doing on January 6th is I was trading and buying oil stocks for my clients, because I knew that with what they wanted to do, and I'm saying this for the podcast listeners in air quotes, but for the green agenda, what they wanted to do was, you know, we're going to spend, you know, $1.9 trillion. We're going to build all these new roads. We're going to have everything go green. Well, what is a big component of building a road? It's oil. A big component of a lot of things are petroleum-based products. And so I knew that, okay, on the one hand, if you're shutting down domestic production and you're doing all sorts of things to stifle, you know, more oil creation in this in this country coming online, and you're penalizing oil producers, well, then obviously, what's going to happen is you're going to see, and as people are coming back online from the pandemic playing out, and now they're actually starting to go out and do things again. Well, then you're going to
spend money into the economy.
Yeah, you're going to see demand rising while supply is being cut, and then basic economics 101 means that you're going to have to move out the price of things. And so that was pretty much like the most obvious thing that there was in terms of what could go up in price inflation. Now, you mentioned the Fed printing money. Now, that is a component of it, obviously, for the overall inflation. And actually, I think I've heard anywhere closer from 65 to 80% of all the money in existence, if you count 2020 and 2021. So, I mean, just a huge amount. But really, we talked about this in the last video that I was in, that what is rare about this time is that you're actually having the dollar getting stronger. And, I'd refer people to the dollar milkshake theory and why that will happen. And it's not really popular amongst our crowd to talk about why the dollar is going to be getting stronger, but eventually, all roads lead to the dollar eventually losing reserve status, and all roads lead to hyperinflation, whether it's, deflation and everything crashing and then needing to print a bunch of money and then going to hyperinflation, or if we skip the deflation and just go right to hyperinflation. Both
and then we move into a great reset and new currency reset and probably digital and all that. But just trailing back to the gas price issue, which I kind of wanted to get into a little bit more, is the fact that, big oil was monopolized by the state in the first place years ago. Then they banned all the alternatives like hemp, and then they come in and say, oh, well, we need to ban straws, and they come in with all this climate change nonsense. And now these oil companies seem to be part of this controlled collapse. They seem to almost be involved in some ways, as far as like them supporting this green, this green revolution, it's called. There's no actual revolution. It's a government just pushing things down our throat that eventually lead to us being tracked and traced, carbon credits, social credit, etc. But the point is, these big oil companies are just as involved. And I think all along they were trying to make people dependent on one system so that they can pull the rug out from underneath people and basically collapse that entire system as far as supply goes. And then guess what? Everyone's in fear, everyone's dependent, and they're so easily controlled. You'll own nothing, you'll be happy, because the government will come in and save the day with food rations, free homes, and a new green way of travel, which is, well, carbon credits and basically these Bill Gates highways that they're building everywhere that stop people from going from point A to point B eventually without these carbon credits. They're already doing it in China. They're doing it in countries all around the world. They've done that with carbon taxes in Canada. They've done that in places like Norway as well. There is such a huge amount of tension building up, and it's all created on purpose. It was all meant to happen, and now we're in this predicament. So, I mean, going forward, like what is one supposed to do about these gas prices when they they need to get to work and they're giving up like a part of their wage every day, a good chunk, just trying to get to and from work because they're paying these insane prices?
Yeah, I mean, that's obviously not like a super easy question to address, because, obviously if you can do something like working remotely, but not everyone can obviously work remotely, that would probably be the best thing to do. But again, maybe that's part of the agenda to keep us isolated. And I feel bad that I've got like an olive drab green shirt on, as we're talking about the screen crap that's going on that wasn't planned. But I mean, the main family that's behind all this was the Rockefeller family, who are the ones who brought us big oil. And now the Rockefellers are it's a Rockefeller Foundation, along with the New York Stock Exchange and ICE, which is not immigration, but the Intercontinental Exchange that owns the New York Stock Exchange. And you can go to their own website. We weren't planning on talking about this. None of this was scripted, but it's called a Natural Asset Corporation, or Natural Asset Class. And basically what they want to do is this is the Rockefeller Foundation, wants to take large swaths of the environment, basically like wall it off, create ETFs on there. Then we'll have carbon taxes that will then pay for, the elite to have their own like walled off garden type areas. And it's like, the Rockefellers, yeah, like they really care about, going green, when it was the Rockefellers who gave us, big medicine and
Standard Oil.
Yeah, obviously through Standard Oil. So it's like, wait, so the people that want to be the stewards of the environment and stewards of going green are the same people that brought us big oil and the same people that brought us big medicine and all the corporatocracy.
Well, that's the thing, Tim. I mean, the biggest polluter in the entire universe is the government, and then they're going to come in to stop pollution, or just like they're going to stop all the murders, all these shootings by taking away the guns, even though they're the biggest MVPs of murder and they've killed millions of people worldwide and staged proxy wars everywhere. Oh, they're going to stop theft on the streets by, well, technically they've failed dramatically because crime rates are skyrocketing, but that's all by design. But the point is, they're going to stop theft when they're the biggest thief in the world. They're just taking everyone's money at will and spending it on murdering kids and polluting the world more. Imagine that. It's always doublethink.
Yeah, or they want to, wreck Russia's economy, so they're going to, punish Russia, and then now Russia, the ruble pretty much has it might. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I think is the strongest currency year to date is the ruble. So good luck, good job, government. Now the ruble is the strongest one there is out of all of them, relative year to date, which is just hilarious.
Well, and Tim, they're blaming the Russia-Ukraine situation for the gas prices, and they're saying the Putin gas price hike. That's what Biden said the other day, the Putin gas price hike. Can you just unpackage that a bit? Because that just seems so off and so wrong when he's the one that's canceling pipelines. He's the one that's shutting down all these projects and taxing the hell out of these companies too. And again, like I said earlier, those companies are pretty willing participants. But the point is, obviously, the government mandates, the government restrictions, the government regulations, the red tape plus inflation are playing into this. So what do you think when you hear, the Putin gas price hike?
I mean, it's just absolutely ridiculous because, some of the main things we've been warning about for years was I actually thought there was going to, dating back to 2013 when, a lot of the Azov battalion overthrow of Russia, Ukraine stuff was going on way back then. I thought the big play was and now this was before like Klaus Schwab's reset, but I thought the currency was going to be a reset, and the best way to do that would be to have some outside actor like a Russia or a China getting into a war with them and then saying, everything was going great, and if it wasn't for this, because they can't admit that the whole system is one big systemic fraud. Now, getting back to your point, in terms of the Pooty Poop being to blame for everything. I mean, it wasn't an accident that on January 6, 2021, that I was going and buying oil stocks for all of my clients. That was not an accident because I knew that, everything I just said before, that if you're going to cut supply domestically, well, then also, having more demand coming online, while then having more demand through, the $1.9 trillion boondoggle that luckily didn't get passed, that obviously, all roads, no pun intended, are going to lead to a higher oil price. And then now Putin would be to blame for this. So they get a scapegoat. Now, I thought they're going to use that also as a scapegoat for the Federal Reserve to not have to sell bonds off their balance sheet, and then also not to raise rates. And we did predict on video 4 minutes into the video, so it's not like I had 1,000 predictions and like 3 came true. I had like 3 main predictions in our video, and it was like war with Russia and Ukraine for our end of year video. It was, it's been way too quiet on the gun front, and they're going to be, so one was at the 4-minute mark, one was at the hour 7 mark, where we said, it's way too quiet on the gun front, and they're probably going to come after the guns before the midterms. Yeah. And also, I already forgot the third one, monkeypox. So 4 minutes into the video, talked about monkeypox being the excuse for the Federal Reserve to then be able to print more money. So here we are, it's beginning of June, all 3 of those have already come true. But the monkeypox is just weird how they're going to, not to divert it into the monkeypox conversation, but how they're going to use that to then, maybe it's predictive programming to then be able to, scare people down in the future. And I will give credit to, obviously Alex Jones and Greg Reese for having that report, which, helped, make me, think about that. And I think one of the most important skills anyone could have is being able to take information and discernment and see who's basically telling the truth, who's lying, who's trying to propagandize you, and just kind of taking in different narratives from different ways and then trying to then see what is the best narrative. And so, right. Unfortunately, that's why people like Josh and I have been kicked off YouTube and Facebook, and that's why a lot of, the best people out there are not there anymore, because, the media wants to be able to control the narrative and tell you what to think. I mean, there's people at CNN who are like, don't look at the WikiLeaks. There's a Chris Cuomo, like, only we're the ones who are allowed to tell you what to think and how to do this stuff.
The most trusted name in news, right? Okay, yeah, sure.
I mean, even like you and I saw the other day, and like yesterday, I was just telling Josh, I'm like, Josh, did you see who's the head of the new UN disarmament, the president? And I'm like, just give me the most ridiculous guess possible. I'm like, and every time, I'm like, no, more ridiculous, like the most ridiculous guess possible. And spoiler alert, it's North Korea. North Korea is now the head of the UN as a president of the UN Disarmament Committee.
Yeah.
It just goes perfectly with Saudi Arabia and China, who were previous human rights.
It's all double think. But to get back to the subject of gas and inflation, I do think that all of this is by design. The whole idea is all these things are different pieces of the same puzzle, from the pandemic to the vaccine kill-off, the eugenics experiments that are going on right now, and the side effects of them being autoimmune disorders, and that being shingles, and they could blame it on monkeypox, and then at the same time, the supply chain collapse, which also affects gasoline dramatically, and of course, inflation, and war, and you could just keep going. The gun grab. I mean, all of these things, they're all based in Aurelian doublethink, so they always give you a solution that is what actually creates a problem in the first place. It's like free healthcare, even though free healthcare just leads to healthcare being more expensive. So it means that it's a perpetual, circle that just adds to more and more theft, more and more taxes. And again, all these are pieces of a puzzle, the same puzzle, and it's extremely important to understand that every one of these things is interrelated. So going into inflation before we finish off this video, Tim, I mean, when you have restaurants adding inflation fees, I mean, there's shrinkflation, food's getting smaller but stays the same price, and then there is the just basic inflation. You go get chicken at the store and it costs like 8 times more than a year ago. It's insane, and you in many places it's even worse than that, especially more remote communities, because then it's also playing into the supply chain issue at the same time as inflation. I mean, you have...
And they do other things, like let's say you had a $1,000 iPhone, and now the new iPhone, is making up a number, is now $2,000. So that would be 100% inflation from one iPhone to the next. But what they'll say is, oh, the new iPhone has 10 times more features and is faster and better and more gadgets and better camera. So actually, even though it costs twice as much, it has 10 times feature. So we're actually going to relate it as deflation, as in, the price is getting cheaper even though the price costs twice as more. That's a hedonic adjustment. Now, I wrote a book on this, 16 pages long, and it's basically how they rigged the unemployment numbers, the GDP, and the inflation, and it's how they rigged them, not just like complaining about it. It's how they're doing it, and it could have been 200 pages. It's only 16. Go to the website, thelibertyadvisorshow.com, sign up for the email list, and then you'll get that book for free. And if you already know this stuff, you can then send it to other people, because it's free, because I want people to have the information to be able to have our kids not live in this technocratic hellhole. But what is going on right now with the 8.5% stated inflation, which obviously is probably more than like double that. But this is pretty much like the best case scenario, is this like slow roll, everyone going broke safely or slowly type route is sort of the best case scenario for what's going on. Now, I'm saying this somewhat cynically because, I know, how this eventually ends up playing out, and it's going to play out that when you've got, unfunded, $200 trillion of unfunded liabilities through Social Security and Medicare. I think they just came out the other day and said, lowered their trajectory in terms of, when those programs will run out of money and become insolvent. But when you're at this point when you need to just, have, trillions of dollars a year just to pay unfunded liabilities, then pretty soon, like, interest on the debt might even, like, eclipse $1 trillion at the rate that we're going. It's basically game over. Everybody knows it. And so they want to have other people and other bad guys to blame things on. And so Putin is an obvious way to blame things on. But, taking control of what you can do yourself. Now, most financial planners out there are using, 1 to 2% inflation adjustments, and they're doing little financial plans that are showing, hey, these investments are going up 7% per year or something like that. Well, if you're 65 years old and have 40% of your money in bonds, you're going to be absolutely wrecked, because how this works is, I should just use the market board behind me, but it sort of works like a teeter-totter, where when rates go up, the underlying values of the bonds end up going down. So if you have $1 million 10-year duration bond, rates go up 1%, your $1 million is now $900,000. Rates go up 2%. We're not giving crazy tinfoil hat type numbers here. Like, when rates go up 2%, which the Fed says they are, then your $1 million would be now closer to 780, and you've got to wait 10 years to get your money back. But now the horses have ran out of the barn. So people invested in bonds are going to get absolutely wrecked. I'm not giving financial advice on here, just for informational purposes. Obviously, do your own research. And so all of these projections that the average financial planner are going to use are basically going to be worthless, because, if you're assuming 2% inflation and then you get 8, I mean, basically every single plan on the planet will blow up if you use 8% inflation versus 2. Not to mention the real inflation rate's probably closer to 15 to 20, if you go to shadowstats.com, which is John Williams' website. And so right now, I just want to let people know, like, these are the quote unquote good times. 2 years ago on March 6, 2020, I said that we'll look back from this as the good times, as they use all these crises, planned or not, to take away our freedoms. And, and I think that, nailed it then, unfortunately, because I wish, we're not nailing this stuff. But, these will be looked at as the good times when inflation really starts kicking up, especially since, the Biden regime wants to, give themselves a pat in the back of how great of a job they're doing. But this then plays into their agenda to then, invest more in green technologies, invest more in solar, and invest more in all the same crap that we've been hearing that they've been pushing. This is a deliberate demolition of the country, a deliberate shutting off of the energy. And, it wasn't an accident that I was buying oil stocks on January 6th for my clients. And it's not because I had anything to do with January 6th. It's because, at this point, Biden's definitely getting in. The Q people fell for it. And now, it just is what it is now.
Yeah, well, I think it's pretty obvious that all of this leads to one place. Tyranny comes under the guise of convenience, as I always say. So, and this is a war on humanity. And the idea is that we have all these different things that culminate with people, the general public, no matter how awake they are, most people will be begging for help, begging for relief from what's coming to them, and so they'll ask the government for help. That is all. Like, you could be the government will and the Fed will shove you down a bottomless pit, and the only way up is to grab their hand. That's the whole purpose.
The creator of the Federal Reserve System, James Warburg, who was Daddy Warbucks in the play Annie, he was modeled after, said we shall have a one. This is the guy that said the Federal Reserve said we shall have a one world government. It's only a matter of consent or conquest. They realize conquest doesn't do that great of a job. So like your point, you need people to beg for the quote unquote help. And the help is going to be, we broke your legs and here's a wheelchair, except this time we made you poor. Here's a CBDC. Here's your universal basic income. And at that point, they're going to have you by the you-know-what. And that's why we're looking at moving out into a farm and being able to be self-sustainable and practicing what we're preaching right now, because it's going to be that dire.
Right. Well, I mean, the idea is they break your legs, put you in a wheelchair, and the wheelchair only moves if you have a good social credit. So otherwise, you're just stuck there with broken legs in a chair. So I think really what we're witnessing right now is the Great Reset. There's two ways out of it. There is go along with the government, become dependent, own nothing, and be happy, quote unquote, as the government feeds you food rations that are full of GMOs and mRNA, vaccine, poison, or perhaps have a house that monitors where you are, has cameras in it, sees what you're doing at all times of the day, monitors everything in your entire life, and controls your mind, your thoughts, your energy, all of these things, and eventually just disposes of you like Logan's Run after a certain amount of time where you're not necessary or you're not needed in the world anymore, according to the state, according to the globalists. The other option is being self-sustainable, growing your own, being able to catch your own fish, being able to build your own structures, being able to dig your own wells, being able to have long-term storable foods, which I say all the time, whamsurvival.com. I have long-term storable foods that you could buy, as well as at heavensharvest.com. You could go and get long-term storable food, as well as heirloom seeds, which are going to be extremely important. Get seeds now. I mean, seriously, it's very important for you to have this backup. Seeds will just grow your food for the rest of your life. I mean, it's very important to understand this. Get out of big cities. That's the idea of Agenda 2030, is to get people into big cities, control them with technocracy to the point of them begging for more technocracy, and then they, again, dispose of you. They want to kill you off. They want to destroy the human in the person. So it's not just eugenics. It's also, as James Patrick, who was recently on our show, who did the movie Planet Lockdown, he recently mentioned something very interesting to me in one of our interviews, which was the idea of dysgenics, which is basically they don't have to kill you. They could just kill you inside, basically, and destroy you from within, so that you become a useless, wandering tool of the establishment. And that is 100% what they are doing right now. On top of the murder, then they have the remaining people, and they utilize those people as basically cogs in their system, pawns to be sacrificed for the king and the queen in the grand chessboard of globalism. So as we enter this new world order, and we already are in one, but they're creating a new technocratic version where they destroy the soul of the human and basically destroy empathy and consciousness and make us robots, which robots can replicate us in every single way except for empathy and consciousness, which then makes them psychopathic. So again, they want to create, they think the only way that humans are going to keep up with this technology is by themselves being non-empathetic drones of, sad excuses for so-called human beings. Just destroy the human in the human. And that's why I always say this is a war on humanity. And if there's a war on humanity, the solution is to be more human, be more conscious, be more empathetic. And a big part of that is also what the basis of humanity is itself, which is individual responsibility, which is survival, which is freedom, empathy. All those things are actually synonymous and build upon each other. And I really urge people to get out of big cities, prepare yourself, stock up, and also get out of the banking system. In my opinion, you should get the hell out of the banking system. With bail-in regimes coming in the cashless society and the Amero or the world currency SDR system based on social credit, you should be out of the banking system, because no matter what, no matter how secure you think you are, bail-in regimes, impossible to get around that and to do a run on the bank in a cashless society. Impossible. You are essentially enslaved to the banking system and then the state and everything they want from you in the desperation and the struggle that comes with that. With that said, I believe in gold and silver. I believe in things like, decentralized, properly fundamentally useful blockchain technology. I know they're using blockchain technology against us, but a big part of that would be privacy coins. Privacy coins, in my opinion, are extremely important in the future. It's the only way, in a lot of ways, that people are going to be able to make payments between each other freely without the eye of the state watching them and that eye in the sky controlling their every move with their money. If you can't control your money, then you are being controlled by other people, and those people have very nefarious plans for you and want to destroy you from within. So again, check those links below, my friends, and if you want to become a client at Tim Picciot's, go to thelibertyadvisor.com. We're going to be doing a lot more videos right away, and we're working on a lot of stuff off camera. So bear with us as much as you can. We're trying our best to make sure that you guys have content all the time, and you guys can learn from the things that we're seeing happen around us and maybe build upon that and build a better life for yourself and your family going forward. So stay tuned for much more. This inflation is going nowhere but up at this point, with interest rates going up in a crisis. They are ready for the big boom at this point. They're like, let's just throw all of our cards at this issue at the same time and see what happens and see how panicked and how much order they can get out of the chaos.
They're going for broke.
Yeah, they're going for broke. Absolutely. So anyway, I appreciate everyone watching. Check those links below. As I say all the time, gogetfunding.com, Patreon, subscribe. So we have a PayPal address, we have a Bitcoin address, and we have a Cointree link with multiple different cryptocurrencies that you can donate in if you please, as well as our Epic Fund Me campaign where you could use Epic Cash, a privacy coin. Epic Cash is based on the Mimblewimble protocol. Also, we are on Telegram, World Alternative Media. We have our Telegram channel, World Alternative Media Announcements. We have our newsletter, www.iamband.com, and of course, we have our Teespring store where you could get merchandise. As I've been mentioning lately, we're on band.video now, thanks to Michael Zimmerman and Alex Jones for giving us a place to speak. And, of course, we are on Rockfin, where you can get exclusive content if you go and sign up for Rockfin. We put up documentaries exclusively. We have Q&As coming up right away. We just need you to send your questions in first before we can do the Q&As. Those videos will also go up on Patreon and Subscribestar as well. And, of course, we have our amazing affiliates. As I mentioned, whamsurvival.com for long-term storable foods. We have other storable foods as well at Heaven's Harvest, as well as heirloom seeds and water filtration units and survival resources. So go to that site and use code WHAM, that's W-A-M, and you get free shipping on all of any of that in the United States, for the most part, excluding a couple products. And of course, there is rncstore.com, Richardson Nutritional Center, your source for Laetrile Online, made famous by G. Edward Griffin's book, World Without Cancer. Get your apricot seeds, Laetrile, amygdalin, and vitamin B17 there. And of course, speaking of G. Edward Griffin, the Red Pill Expo 2022 is coming up right away, so check out our affiliate link below for that. July 9th to 10th in Indianapolis, Indiana, and a lot of people are going to be there. Dr. David Martin, G. Edward Griffin, many, many more more. So check that link below. We're on BitChute, Odyssey, Rumble, and Brighteon, World Alternative Media. We're on Hive, Steemit, and Float.app at Josh Sigurdsson. Tim is on basically all the platforms as well at The Liberty Advisor. And of course, I'm on the bad guys, TikTok and Instagram, World Alternative Media, as well as Twitter and Getter at World Alt Media. Check those links below, my friends. Podbean. Yeah, of course, we're on Spotify, Podbean, worldaltmedia.podbean.com, Opera, Apple Podcasts, all of those. Give us a good rating on those. I don't know how much longer we're going to be on there, but we'll do our best to, well, actually, we're not self-censoring, so, you know, if they kick us off, whatever. But for those that want to listen to us, they can go on there. I'm sure many are right now. And, of course, make sure to hit that like button, share on social media,